One of the most persistent mistakes of the mind is confusing intention with outcome. You decide to change. You promise yourself to act differently. You form a clear intention, and it feels decisive. You think, now that I want this, things will be different. But intention does not produce results. Intention is a mental position, a direction, a declaration. Results emerge from systems, from habits, from conditions, from repeated behavior over time. This is why people sincerely intend to change and still repeat the same outcomes. Not because they are dishonest, not because they lack motivation, but because intention does not override how a system operates. The mind overestimates intention because intention feels active. You choose, you decide, you commit, and that moment feels powerful. It creates a sense of control. But the system you are trying to change does not respond to decisions. It responds to patterns. You can intend to stay calm, but when the trigger appears, the nervous system reacts before intention has any influence. You can intend to be disciplined, but when fatigue sets in, automatic habits take over. You can intend to communicate better, but under pressure, old dynamics reappear. The intention was real. The effort was sincere. The result didn't follow. This creates confusion. You think, if my intention was genuine, why didn't it work? And the mind draws the wrong conclusion. It assumes, I didn't want it enough. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't commit properly. But the issue is not sincerity. It is timing. Intention is formed after patterns are already in place. It arrives too late to influence automatic processes. This is why intention feels effective in theory, but unreliable in practice. It describes what you want. It does not change what is already running. And because intention feels conscious, the mind gives it too much credit. It believes wanting equals doing, but systems don't work that way. They change through repetition, through altered conditions, through consistent exposure to new responses, not through a single decision. This is where frustration begins. You intend again. You promise again. You recommit. And when the same result appears, you blame yourself. But intention was never the missing piece. It was never enough. To begin with, this confusion between intention and result is reinforced by how we talk to ourselves. You say, I really mean it this time. I've decided. I'm serious now. And that language creates relief, because forming an intention feels like taking action. The mind interprets it as progress, but intention changes nothing in the system itself. It only changes the story you tell about the future. The system that produces behavior is not listening to promises. It is listening to repetition, to what happens when the trigger appears, to what response follows, to what outcome is reinforced. This is why intention feels strongest when nothing is happening, in calm moments, in reflection, in planning. But the moment pressure appears, intention weakens. Not because it disappears, but because it has no leverage. Automatic processes are already running, and automatic processes do not negotiate, they execute. This is where people get discouraged. They mistake failure of outcome for failure of character. They think, if I really wanted this, I would have done it. But wanting is not a mechanism. It is a preference. Preferences do not override systems. This is why motivation spikes and then collapses. The spike comes from intention. The collapse comes from reality. Reality does not respond to how much you want something. It responds to what you repeatedly do under real conditions. Fatigue, stress, distraction, emotional activation. None of these are addressed by intention, so the same result appears again. And when it does, the mind reacts. It tightens. It recommits. It doubles down on intention. I need to be more determined. I need to try harder. I need to push through. But pushing does not reprogram automatic behavior. It creates resistance. And resistance increases friction, which makes the old pattern even more likely to return. This is why people feel caught in cycles of recommitment. They keep renewing intention instead of changing conditions, because intention feels controllable. Conditions do not. Conditions require adjustment, observation, experimentation. They require admitting that wanting was never enough. And that admission is uncomfortable, so the mind avoids it. It prefers to believe that the next intention will finally work. But results don't wait for better intentions. They emerge from what is consistently in place, whether you intend them or not. This is where the real shift happens. Not when intention becomes stronger, but when conditions change. Results don't follow decisions. They follow environments. They follow what is available, what is easy, what is repeated when attention is elsewhere. This is why small changes matter more than strong intentions. Changing when and where a behavior happens. Changing what happens right before the trigger. Changing what is reinforced after the response. These adjustments feel minor, almost irrelevant. They don't feel decisive. They don't feel heroic, but systems respond to them. The nervous system does not ask what you intend. It responds to what occurs again and again. When intention is paired with unchanged conditions, nothing moves. When conditions shift, results follow, even without strong intention. This is why change often surprises you. You notice one day that something feels easier, not because you decided harder, but because the system no longer supports the old response. The friction has moved. This is the part people miss. They wait for motivation. They wait for certainty. They wait for confidence. But those things usually appear after change has already begun, not before. Results create confidence, not the other way around. This is why relying on intention keeps you stuck in preparation. You are always about to change, always planning, always recommitting. But real change happens quietly, without ceremony. It shows up in moments that feel ordinary. You respond slightly differently. You pause instead of reacting. You act without thinking about it. And only later, you realize something has shifted. Not because you wanted it more, but because the system was allowed to do something else. Intention still has a role. It points a direction, but direction is not movement. Movement happens when the path changes. When you stop expecting intention to do the work of conditions, change becomes practical, less dramatic, more reliable. And that reliability is what actually lasts. This is inner cognition.